Good evening, all. Tonight I wanted to do a brief review of the sequel to Blade Runner, Blade Runner 2049, which came out in 2017. It was directed by the brilliant Denis Villeneuve, who most of you will know now from Dune Parts 1 and 2, and I understand Part 3 is coming up. And I'm also very excited to learn that he is directing a film version of Arthur C. Clarke's wonderful novel Rendezvous with Rama, about astronauts who encounter a strange alien object in the solar system and go and explore it. But Blade Runner 2049 it's not really a direct sequel. It's more of a movie that's in the same milieu, I should say, as Blade Runner. Even the fact that it features Harrison Ford as Rick Deckard doesn't really make it a direct sequel. And it wasn't written that way. And even though it was co-written by Hampton Fancher, who, with David Webb Peoples, wrote the final shooting script of Blade Runner. And also Michael Green also was one of the writers. It's basically the story of, well, it stars Ryan Gosling as Officer K, who is also known as Joe, Harrison Ford as Rick Deckard, Ana de Armas as Joy, and that's spelled Joi, who is K's holographic girlfriend. Sylvia Hoeks as Love, and that's spelled Luv, who is the assistant and assassin for the sinister character Niander Wallace, who is played wonderfully by Jared Leto. Mackenzie Davis plays a woman named Mariette, who is a prostitute, but she's also part of the quote-unquote replicant resistance movement. And we find out a little more about that in the movie. Robin Wright plays Lieutenant Joshi, who Kay also just refers to as Madam, who is his direct supervisor. David Baitista plays a character called Sapper Morton, who is a Nexus 8 replicant. We find out who worked as a combat medic in the off-world colonies somewhere. Carla Juri plays a character named Dr. Anna Stelline, and she plays a very pivotal role in the plot, and I'll explain that as I go along. And Edward James almost reprises his role as Gaff, who was another Blade Runner who briefly worked with Deckard in the original Blade Runner. This takes place in a fictional 2049, 30 years after the original movie, which was set in Los Angeles in a fictional 2019. There have been a couple of events that are important. One of them was called the Blackout, which occurred in 2022, during which basically all the world's computer networks went down. And a lot of information about the world prior to that event has been lost. Also, as in PKD's novel Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, there's been a quote-unquote kippleization. Kipple is garbage, and a word Dick made up for garbage. And things like, old broken computers litter the landscape. There's been sort of an environmental disaster, it says at the beginning, and humanity was basically saved by Niander Wallace, who took over from the deceased Eldon Tyrell as the head of the Tyrell Corporation and began manufacturing Nexus 8 and 9 replicants. Nexus 9 replicants do not rebel. They don't kill humans. They don't kill people in general. They don't disobey orders from humans. So that's a difference between them and the Nexus 6s that we saw in Blade Runner, who had more independent thought. The opening scene, and again, I'm not going to go over this entire thing, but it opens with an investigation by Officer K, played by Ryan Gosling, in a remote sort of area outside of Los Angeles. And he comes across this character, Sapper Morton, who is just cooking dinner in a little sort of a hovel that he has where he cooks things and repairs things. And this was actually taken from a scene that was cut from the original Blade Runner. The original Blade Runner was going to open on this same scene, and they decided not to do it for some reason, but Villeneuve adapted it for Blade Runner 2049. It works very well. He investigates, interrogates Morton, who he knows is a replicant, and Morton is denying it at first, but he's come to retire him, and we learn this through the sequence that they go through. They end up going through a fight, and Baitista is very strong. He punches him through a wall, but he has a blaster like Deckard has, and he eventually kills him. Then he discovers something interesting. He discovers two things. One, there's a tree, and trees are very rare now. The environment has been destroyed by what was referred to as World War Terminus. And he finds this tree, which is intact, and also it has a date burned into or carved into it. And that date is 6/20/21. And again, apparently referring to June 20th, 2021. And that becomes a significant date. He doesn't understand what it means, but he photographs it. Also, at the base of this tree, there is a wooden box. And he takes the box, and inside the box, he finds a bone. And he brings this back to Los Angeles and turns it over to his superior, Lieutenant Joshi, played by Wright. And she has it examined and finds out that the bone is manufactured, but it appears to have come from a female replicant who died during a cesarean section. Now, that in itself is very significant because replicants were not supposed to be able to reproduce with humans or each other. And that leads Kay on a search to find out, who was this and what happened. He goes to a very old archive of records, and they find very little information, but something that leads back to Deckard, who is apparently now hiding somewhere. They don't know where. He's still alive, but they don't know where he is. He interviews Gaff briefly, and Gaff just tells him, he says, what can you tell me about Deckard? And he said, I can tell you one thing, he liked to work alone. And that doesn't really give Kay much of a clue. He's trying to figure out what's going on. Meanwhile, he is someone who's always reliable, and he's asked to do these little tests called I think a clearance, and he's made to repeat phrases. There's a significant bit here. The phrases where he keeps saying "cells within cells interlinked" is from Vladimir Nabokov's novel Pale Fire. That book is not one of my favorites of his, but it's interesting because the book itself is a parody of a fictional novel called Pale Fire. And amongst other things, one of the things that happens in the book, there are these people who are searching for something called the White Mountain. Well, it turns out that's a typographical error. It was supposed to be the White Fountain. So the whole quest that they've been on is phony because of a typographical error. And that's kind of Nabokov sticking his thumb out at the publishing industry and some of the things that he had written, which he thought were distorted, particularly Lolita. But again, the references to that come up. He always passes a clearance test, and Lieutenant Joshi says, calls him good old reliable K. Well, he starts becoming unreliable as things go on. He is going through some of what this case with his holographic girlfriend, Joy, who is, again, played by Ana de Armas, and she starts telling him that she thinks that there may be some sort of link to his own past. And he has a dream in which he is in an orphanage and he's being chased, and there's something that he threw into a fireplace and to keep other kids from getting it. And it turns out that in the dream, it's a wooden horse, and it appears to have numbers burnt into it on the bottom, which are the same as the numbers on the tree, 6/20/21. And he doesn't know what this means, but he's trying to find out. He finds through some very old records that there were two anomalous births on that date, a male and a female, and no information other than that is really known about them. They're sent to an orphanage, and he goes to the orphanage, which is now no longer an orphanage. It's a scrapyard, and basically child labor is being used to recycle old computer parts and broken keyboards and circuit boards and things, but they still have the records of the orphanage, and the director is kind of reluctant to give him any information, being kind of a schmuck, and even though he's a police officer and he has the authority to ask for them, And he does rather reluctantly give him some information. And I don't remember exactly how, but somehow that relates to. He gives the guy is sort of he finds that there is this wooden horse. He finds it and he takes it back to the city and to Anamoid Row, which is where Deckard interrogated the fish lady to find out about the snake scale that was in Leon's bathtub, and finds out it's not fish scale, it's a snake scale, and that it was worn by Zora. But there's a guy there who puts it under a microscope and says, "This is very rare wood, and I'll give you, he offers him a large amount of money for it." And he tells him he doesn't want the money; he wants to know about it. And he says, "Well, I can tell you one thing: it's radioactive, and it could be dangerous. You should watch having too much exposure to it." Well, he's trying to figure out, what does this mean? Why is it radioactive? What does it mean to him? He goes to a scientist named Dr. Stelline, who is someone who suffers from immunity syndrome. She has no immunity and has to live in literally like a glass bubble, but it's a glass room. And what she does is she creates false memories for replicants, and very intricate ones. We see her in creating one of a birthday party, and she examines. He's able to pass the horse through a gateway to her where he doesn't touch it, and she doesn't touch him either. And she says, "Yes, this was created. It's related to a false memory that I created." And all she tells me is it had to do with some children who were born in an orphanage. And so he goes to the orphanage, like I say, he finds the records, and that kind of correlates what Dr. Stelline was telling him. And when he traces the record, he's starting to think that maybe, for some reason, I don't remember exactly why, he thinks he's the male that was born on that date because it corresponds to his birth date or his creation date as a replicant, I should say. And he's beginning to question whether this is true or not. And Joy kind of buoys him up and says, "I knew you were special. You're born, not created." And he decides he's gonna pursue this. Well, meanwhile, there's this guy Niander Wallace is becoming suspicious of Kay's activities, doesn't like what he's doing, is afraid that some secret is going to be exposed, and sends his agent named Love after Kay, and has her spy on him, on his doings, and try to sort of interfere. His car is attacked, and Joy's holographic projector is damaged, and then he is somewhat injured, but not badly, and decides he's going to continue this search. Like I said, the records lead him to Deckard, that there's some connection to Deckard and these mysterious children who vanished on that date, and the orphanage. And so he goes to Las Vegas, which is radioactive, which is where he figures the horse came from because the radioactivity amounts jibe. There's some wonderful cinematography of the destroyed Vegas, which is the cinematography was done in this movie by Richard Deakins. No, it's not as good as Jordan Cronenweth's in Blade Runner, but it's still very, very good. And the colors, the saturation, the angles are all really quite good. The contrast of light and darkness. Kay finds Deckard in Las Vegas, and he's living in an old hotel. One of the funny scenes, he has a dog with him. And he says, "Is that dog real?" He says, Deckard says, "I don't know. Why don't you ask him?" It was a great comeback. And at first he's being, kind of snarky with him. He doesn't want to cooperate with him. He shoots at him. He's like trying to kill him. He thinks he's a replicant who's come to, kill him. And finally, Kay admits that he's not, and tells him what he's looking for. He's demanding to know the name of the woman who died from the cesarean section, the replicant woman. And eventually, Deckard breaks down and tells him that her name was Rachel, and that they did indeed have a child, and they had to give it up because he said, sometimes, in order for what's best for the child is you have to give it up and never see them. And Kay again is starting to get the feeling that he's the child, and again, I won't give too many spoilers about what happens next. But Deckard is, and like I said, Kay is being pursued by Love, who's Niander Wallace's uh, subaltern and lieutenant, and she arrives and arrests Deckard and wounds Kay somewhat seriously, and they take Deckard back to see Wallace. Wallace is trying to get some sort of answers out of him about what happened. He wants to find out the secret of whether or not replicants can, in fact, reproduce, because that would be very frightening. That would mean that they could technically replace humanity. Humanity is dying out anyway, is implied in this movie from the results of the nuclear war. And World War Terminus, as Dick called it in the book. And so he's trying to get the answers from Deckard. And one of the things he does, he tries to trick him by he creates a duplicate of Rachel. And she's saying, what's the matter? Don't you want to kiss me? Don't you love me? And Deckard just turns to Wallace and says, her eyes were green. And the duplicate's eyes are brown. And Joy rather viciously kills her after that. And then there's a scene where they're trying to figure out where Kay is, because again they think he has this knowledge about what happened and who the child is and where the child might be, and if there is a child, they want the child. So again, they pursue him. They pursue him into Los Angeles. There's a kind of a scene that I think is supposed to be in the L.A. River Basin, but now it's very flooded, and Deckard breaks out. Kay breaks Deckard out of Niander Wallace's place and takes him with them. And Love is pursuing them rather relentlessly, and she's got this really vicious knife, and she kills Lieutenant Joshi trying to get information about Kay, and then she pursues them to the LA River Basin. She and Kay get into an enormous a kicking and fist fight, and she stabs him several times, but he eventually drowns her. And then he has figured out through following these clues and speaking to one of the members of the replicant resistance movement, who tells him the girl had to be hidden. Now he knows he's not the child. The child was a girl. The son was a fake used to throw people off the track. And there never was a boy child. It was only a girl. And Kay has figured out through his detective skills that the woman is Dr. Stelline, and he wants to take Deckard to see her because it's his daughter. And so he does. In the end, he is dying because he has been mortally wounded by Love, and takes Deckard to see Dr. Stelline and says, "I think you should go in and see your daughter. It's okay. I'll wait here outside for you." And rather oddly, it is snowing in Los Angeles, which is something that it never does. But again, I guess there's been environmental changes and global warming and environmental disasters too. And interestingly, he starts to die on the steps, outside of Dr. Stelline's institute, and we hear the reflection of Vangelis's theme as Roy Batty was dying in the rain. But Kay's death is much different. He doesn't say anything. He has no dramatic speech. He, in essence, just gives up. He's so crushed by the fact that he is not who he thought he was. He's not human, that he just lets himself die. And I think that's rather sad. It's very well done. And then Harrison Ford, Deckard, sees Dr. Stelline and talks to her, acknowledging that she is he and Rachel's daughter, and indeed Rachel could reproduce. That was Dr. Tyrell's quote-unquote last secret, that Rachel was able to reproduce with a human being. I liked it. I thought it was good. Was it as good as the original? No. It asked some interesting questions, though it did not ask the same questions as the initial movie, which had things like, what makes us human? Are we more than just the sum of our memories? Could an android given memories become human simply by having unique experiences, as seemed to be the case with Roy Batty? Those questions are not asked here. K is a very different kind of a replicant. He conforms. He does what he's told. Like I said, he basically dies of a broken heart when he finds out that he's not human, and he never was human. He always has been a replicant. And he just accepts that fate, which I thought was rather sad. There is allegedly going to be a TV series called Blade Runner 2099, which is going to be, again, directed by Ridley Scott. It's in production, but it's hit some snags, and obviously during the COVID pandemic. But my understanding is it is indeed still in production. I'll be very interested to see that, though, I'm not champing at the bit. I don't necessarily think there needs to be any other movies in this franchise. I think Blade Runner stands alone, and this movie itself stands alone as well. It's really quite good, and Villeneuve is a fantastic director, and I think he really did an excellent job.